Good evening, everybody. This is your boy Chuck Perkins, and we coming at you live with the Village Rising community. Me and my girl Lex, we just laying the breadcrumbs down for you. So today we decided we have a very, very important topic we would like to discuss, and it's the topic of voting. I can't wait. Lex is on the highway right now, and she's going to be getting off pretty soon, and she'll be checking in with us as soon as she does get off. We'll be looking forward to hearing what she has to say. Just want to let everyone know that right off the top, that I probably have a different position on voting than most people will have. And in fact, most of the times when I've been with my friends, a lot of people I have a tremendous amount of respect for, well-educated people. There are very few of my peers that I've met and had this conversation with pertaining to voting who agree with me. I'll put that out there right now. But it doesn't matter. Sometimes some of us, we are just thinking a little bit before our time. We're a little bit ahead of the rest of the group. So I'm going to drop it on you right quick. Voting has been an issue with us from the very, very beginning. As there were the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment. The 13th Amendment, that's the amendment that freed the slaves. The 14th Amendment, that's the amendment that gave us citizenship. And the 15th Amendment is the amendment that gave Black people the right to vote. So that was critical. It's crucial. Hey, Lex, how you doing?
Hey, Chuck, how's it going?
I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm so happy you were able to jump in here with us.
Yeah,
I see you made it in safe.
I was on pedal to the metal, but I was going safely. But I wanted to
Well,
make sure I got on. How are
well,
you doing
great.
tonight?
I am fantastic, and I just started really just about a minute or so ago, not very long at all. But we talking about this very important issue of voting, and just to get you up to speed, I was just setting the stage, and I was letting our listeners know that my position on voting seems to be a little different from most people. And a lot of my friends, people who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, some of whom are well educated, a lot of them don't agree with my position. And I haven't even talked to you about this, Lex. So I'm not exactly sure where you're going to fall on this, but I'm going to be interested in your position as well. And I started out by explaining, we had the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment. The
Yes,
13th Amendment freed the slaves. The 14th Amendment gave us citizenship, and the 15th Amendment gave us the right to vote. Now
exactly.
that was critical because you talking about African Americans being enslaved in this country, and so if you in slavery, but then Black people they can't vote, then how in the hell you going? How are you going to maintain your freedom? How are you going to maintain your liberation? Right. So it was critical. Now, this is something I've thought about. I've actually had the pleasure of talking to a couple very prominent historians, and I put this question to them, and they don't seem to know the answer. And that is, I've had people say Black men had a chance to vote before white women, and one or two people say so that proves that this country is more sexist than it is racist. And I say, au contraire, no, not so fast. I do believe that there's a reason why Black men had got to vote before white women, and that reason is the country went to war because of slavery, and because of the 3/5 law. White Southern landowners got credit for having slaves, and so because of that law, they wielded way more power in Washington, D.C. than their numbers warranted. Okay. So it was because of slavery, but that's why the North decided they wanted to, while that war happened, because the North was like, look, we're not going to just lay back and just let you, control everything, especially when we have higher numbers, right? So once the country goes to war, if if black men can't vote, and the only people in the South are voting are white men, then it's simple. Do the math. That means that it's only going to be a very, very short period of time before the white Southerners who can vote have basically recreated the same, sort of institutions that the whole country went to war for. So it was a way for the North to kind of check the South. We're going to give black folks the right to vote. And that way, we won't have to worry about another Confederate regime. So all of that was critically important. Now, one thing I do say, from that very first moment, I guess it was this thing was ratified in like 1870. Since then, there have been people in this country trying to take away the vote from black people. And if you during Reconstruction, the black people represented about 40% of the vote in the state of Louisiana. By the early 1900s, because of voter suppression, it had gone from 40% of the voters who being black to just 5%. So one of the things is, for some people say, voting doesn't mean anything. I say, well, if that's the case, if voting doesn't mean anything, then why are people, so busy, sleeping, staying up day and night trying to figure out ways to take your vote? I guess we can see now this sort of voter suppression thing is starting to resurface again in Georgia, right? And I think we're going to start seeing more of this in the country. Reason why? When Ronald Reagan won the presidency, 83% of the people who voted were white.
Right.
When Barack Obama became president, 67% of the voters were white, and that number is continuing to dwindle. A lot of people don't know this. Barack Obama was the first president to ever win without having the majority of the white vote. So because the white number is going down, we're going to start seeing this, what we thought was some archaic idea of voter suppression. We're going to start seeing this thing resurface. But now this gets me to the point, Lex, and now I'm gonna get you in right after I lay this out here, where I'm, a lot of my friends disagree with me. You see, so people will say, you gotta vote. Our people died for you to have the right to vote. I don't agree with that. Our people didn't die. Nobody died for you to have the right to vote. Our people died so that you could have a right to determine your own future. And voting is a tool that's being used, we use to do that. It's one of the tools that we use to do that. But if we have a two-party system, and the way it's set up now, there are some people who could take our vote for granted. And so sometimes I think, as another strategy, we may have to do something to prove to people that you can't take our vote for granted. For instance, now here's where it gets crazy. Now, in order for this to work, Lex, you have to be a voter, and that is, if we have somebody who's just running as far right as they could, as long as they're a little bit left to whoever they're running against, because they know they're going to get our vote. If we say, well, I'll tell you what, here are the things that we would like to see happen, X, Y, and Z. And if you can't deliver on any of those, or you don't tell us what you're going to do about any of this stuff, we're going to stay home. Right? And so okay.
That's actually been attempted before. But,
okay.
Here we are, and this is our biggest problem. Our biggest problem, as what I like to call the minority, but the majority. In my job as research and as polling and as data, it is my job to show the numbers, not the inflated numbers, not the numbers that people want to see, but the actual numbers. We are the people that make the difference at the polls. vote. You got to do this amount of things. Black people have to show up. Black people. Listen, if we actually did what we actually said, and I understand what you're saying about not voting and about that, but this is what I tell people. If we actually stood by what we said, if we say our people died for our right to vote, then my consensus to people are, okay, I get that. We know people died, fought, was beaten in jail. So why are we giving it away? Why are we always the ones that allow people to come into the community with a 2-piece and a biscuit, a band, a party, some toys, some gifts, and we don't have an agenda, a platform, something set up to say, okay, this is what we bring to the table. Now, what are you bringing to the table? We complain, we march, we yell, we scream, but we don't hold people accountable. And I'm gonna say something that's not gonna be popular. We also don't hold people that look like us accountable. We keep voting the same people over and over. Okay. And it kind of goes to the point of what you said. If we're voting and we're not doing anything about it, why are we voting? Why do you vote?
Right.
Why are we voting? So if we continue to let the same people come into our community every 4 years and tell us exactly what they're going to do, and they don't do it, then whose fault is that? Whose fault is that?
But you see, Lex, but that's exactly the point that I'm trying to make. And so because this is a point I made during our last show, our primary goals and objectives has to be to organize and to educate, And so while we are educating, if when it comes to voting, if the only thing we got for those people who may be out there listening to us, the only thing we say, hey, tell you what, you gotta go out there, it's your civic duty, you go and vote. That's it. That's all. That's the only thing we're telling them. Now we know for a fact that there's many instances where people are showing up at the polls, but they are there's certain provisos they have to vote on, and they're not even clear what they really are. They got people who they have to vote for. They don't even know who they are or what they stand for. But while we're educating, if we say, look, as long as you vote, then you done your job, then we are really missing the point, because just showing up at the poll and going through the physical, I guess, process of pressing a button or pulling a lever or whatever it is you do, or writing something on a piece of paper and putting it in the box. If you do that, but you don't know who the hell you're voting for or what you just voted for, then you haven't done anything. But while we educate our people, most of us are saying, if you went there and you did that, then you did your job, and that's nothing.
Well, and here we are. I will use an example. Okay, currently in New Orleans, we are in a runoff for Louisiana Congressional District 2. Okay, and in doing polling and outreach, what I hear from people are they're not pleased with either candidate that's in the runoff. But here's the problem with voting without information, voting without knowing what you're voting for or who you're voting for, and the same tactic of voting that we use for so long. Go out, do your civic duty, and vote. Okay, but there has not been any consensus to tell people this is what this person stands for, and this is what this person stands for. And here's what we always tell people: go do your research. Go vote for this one. Go do your research. But what do you want them to research? What do you want them to look for? We have to stop saying to people, go do your research and then go vote like I told you to vote, or go do your civic duty and then do your research. When people tell me a voteless people is a hopeless people, I correct them and say, no, a hopeless people is a misinformed, miseducated people. It's not a voteless people. If we continue to keep going and vote for the same old, you know what the definition of insanity is, right?
Yes, no doubt.
So
no doubt.
If you're voting the same and you get no results, then you wonder why there's voter apathy. There's voter apathy because people are tired of the same old, same old. But then we don't give any different results. Here we are again. The latest polling that I've just done tells me that Troy Carter is ahead in the race and Karen Carter is behind. Now, let me tell you how politics is different. Now, Gary Chambers was the person who came in third, but was leading in a couple of areas in New Orleans, which he's not even from New Orleans, but he was able to come in and run an aggressive grassroots campaign where what was he doing? Meeting people where they are. That was the, you know, people said, how did he get those numbers? Mind you, I want to say too, everybody else had Gary Chambers at 5 and 6%, Chuck. We had him at 13 to 15%. You know why? Because we saw what he was doing. We saw him going into the communities, sitting down with people, whether it had been a barbershop or a nail salon or anywhere. He was going to the people, sitting down with them, informing them, giving them something that they had not had in a while. So it's almost like those shiny shoes. If I have been wearing these same old worn out shoes over and over again, and somebody comes and brings me a new pair of shoes and it's shiny and there's some new those same old shoes. So again, we're back at the point where we're asking people to go out. Okay, so this person didn't make it and he was your choice. So he didn't make it, but here's your choice now. You go out and vote for one of these two. And so Gary Chambers endorsing one of the two, automatically people who are not familiar with the political process, especially minorities and grassroots outreach, don't understand. Just because I endorse you don't mean my people that supported me previously are going to go out and vote for you. Now, here's where we lack in the Black community as leaders, as clergy, as concerned citizens. We have not given our citizens a voice, information, education to make informed decisions. And when we differ, what happens is if my candidate is this person and your candidate is this person, and I decide that I'm over here and you over there, and neither one of our candidates make it, then what do? We go home. We take our toys and we go home. We're not interested in it anymore because our candidate is gone. The problem with that is that means you were never really interested in the actual race. You were never really interested in what was going on in the community. You were never really interested in making sure you're informed on what's happening. So why vote? Why vote? If your only vote is for your person that you're supporting, and once your person's out, then you sitting out, then why vote to begin with? Because that's a popularity contest. That has nothing to do with the issues that are facing the community. And this is how we continue to lose voters. Now, I will tell you the change in New Orleans had less to do with the demographics as it had to do with people who are tired of the same old, same old. People are tired of people coming to their communities every 2 years, making promises, saying things they're going to say, doing the same old things. And then the people get in their cars, Chuck, and they drive down the same streets and lose their engine because they have run into one of those major potholes in the city. Or their children can't go to community schools anymore because all these charter schools have come in and taken the community schools out as we've known it growing up. And now they're just in the number. And education is not a priority. Listen, New Orleans crime rate is something that people like to emphasize. It all starts with education. You want to change the power structure and you want to change how things are done in the city and in New Orleans, be informed. And it's not just about voting. Voting is a percentage of it. That's power. But in order for our people to gain that power, we have to inform and educate. Just telling people to go out and vote for somebody because that person, or the worst I've ever heard, go out and vote the lesser of two evils. I have never understood that. That to tell people, well, I know you don't like this person. I know you don't like this person, but hold your nose and vote for the lesser of two evils.
See, I mean, it is unfortunate that that's a part of the process, a part of the discussion. But I get that. And if we're being, at the very least, if we're being well informed, and you say, I don't like these two people, but this person is going to do X and Y that I really don't like. But now this person over here is going to do X, Y, and Z. All right, I'm gonna go with the person that's going to do X, Y. I'm a, at least, he'll probably do less damage, hopefully. So, I believe that the biggest problem is just telling people, we're not telling anybody anything about being informed. We just say, hey, just make sure you vote. And if we continue to do that, I think we've missed the mark. Now, what I'm interested in, Lex, is, because you said it, you used the word, I'm glad you said it, voter apathy. Right. And most times when we talk about voter apathy, it's like the onus is on the voter. It's like that voter apathy exists because of you as an individual, because you are not sophisticated enough. You are not educated enough. You're not civic minded enough. You just sit back and you work menial jobs or do whatever, or you just don't care, and so you get what you get. But you see, I don't think that it's that the voter apathy exists solely because of the voters, right? I mean, you said it earlier. If people are always telling you to go vote, but then every time you go vote, you see people, they show up like every 2 years, every 4 years. As soon as that's over with, you never see them. And then for the most part, when you look around, nothing really does seem to change. Well, to be honest with you, even though I want people to know I'm a chronic, I vote every time there's an election, or I'm going to say at least 95% of the times. Okay. Right. But when I talk to people who are apathetic, right, I get it. I don't just say, oh man, you're a loser, because when people say they are apathetic, I get it. But my question to you, Lex, is, because I think this is the thing we don't talk about. What can be done to change the voter apathy? What are the things that we could do to change that?
Well, here's the problem. We first have to understand that we have a problem in our community that we don't address when it comes to our issues and our concerns. You have to see that every 2 to 4 years is the only time that we start to talk about really what our concerns are and what our real issues are. We don't hold the feet to the fire of the people who represent us. So my point is, I've sat down with voters in focus groups, and they've told me about their apathy. And so what I've done is I've said back to them, listen, this isn't something that anybody should be on TV saying, oh, shame these voters for not turning out. Oh, shame these voters for not coming to the polls. We didn't do a good job of explaining what we're supposed to do. You know how many people I meet, Chuck, don't even know what a congressman does? Don't know what a city council member does? Doesn't know what the DA does? Doesn't know what the House representative, state senator, have no clue what they do. So my concern with that is, how can I expect you to go out and make a conscious decision about this position, this job, when I haven't even made a conscious decision to explain to you or to make sure you understand what this position does? There are people who are able to run for office, but don't, because first thing they think you got to have a college degree. They think you got to have this, and this. They think you got to have all this. There are common citizens that would be very great in position, but we have not explained. We have not given information to say, listen, if you want to run for your city council, this is all you need. These are the tools you need.
But now let me ask you this. So I get that, and you could, and technically you're right. Theoretically, you're right on point. But when we talk about those offices you just mentioned, if you don't have money, if you don't have the money for posters and billboards and all of this other sort of stuff that comes along with it, Do you think it's feasible that, like a outsider could just, with just the heart and the intellect, the will to do the work of the people, you think it's possible that a person who have all of those great qualities minus money could still do it?
Chuck, I've done it. I've done it in numerous races. But here's where we started. We didn't start, if we were running in 2019, we started in 2017. We didn't start in 2019. This is where I think, and I
Can
have
you
to say,
think can you think of anybody in Louisiana who might fit that description? Because right now in the presidency, I mean, they say anybody could be president, and
no,
I
I
guess.
don't believe that. I don't believe that because let me tell you something. Not anybody can be president. Donald Trump had 40 years of television. You got to remember, prior to becoming president and prior to becoming the person that everybody by African American rappers, he was, he was in videos. He was like he was Don King's best friend. He was all over the place. This isn't somebody that just popped on the scene and was like, okay, he may not have what we call the intellect to be president, but this is who we got, and they no, that's not what happened. And the problem with saying that anybody could be president and looking at Donald Trump and using him as a poster is wrong. This man was on national TV. He was, the head of the beauty pageant thing. He was on The Apprentice. This is somebody who had nationwide notoriety, whether you liked him or not. He was there, and he also has the amount of money to be able to make that kind of statement and make that kind of run. So of course he's able to do something that other people haven't. But we're seeing this not as much in our great state of Louisiana yet, but it's happening nationwide, Chuck. People, everyday citizens, are coming to the point of saying, listen, I'm going to run for office. I don't have a lot of money, but I have this mission. This is my cause. This is my focus. They get together, they get their groups together. They start doing phone banking. They start doing outreach, and it's happening. It's not happening as much in the South, but it is happening nationwide. And we have to stop saying not in Louisiana. We have to stop saying this can't happen in Louisiana. Things that are happening nationwide can't happen in Louisiana because Louisiana is the South and Louisiana is this and Louisiana. No, we continue to make excuses for things that we don't want to do because it seems hard for us to do it. Your question to me, can it be done in Louisiana? Yes, it can. Yes, it can.
But
And
I'm not
without
even.
money. Without
But
money.
I'm not even talking about just. I'm not even talking about just Louisiana. I lived in Chicago for 10 years. I think I'm sure that we could all cite some examples of where there were some people running for political office who didn't have a lot of money. But to me, it seems as if, again, not just in Louisiana, all across this country, it's like the higher up the position, the more money it's going to cost you. And again, there are some examples of people who buck the trend, but I think chances are more so than not that for this great democracy of ours, it's getting more and more to be the kind of the process to whereas if you don't have money, forget about it. Or if you don't have if you don't have backers or some people willing who's gonna support you and give you the money, forget about it.
Well, and I'll tell you where the consensus, where I see the problem, and this is me leaving the opinion piece and coming in with the factual piece. We are the only community that is not able to regulate and stimulate its own economy. We are the only community.
Why do you
And
say
we
that?
are, because here's the point. In New Orleans, I'm just talk our neighborhoods. I'm just say this. Mm-hmm. The city council makeup, okay? The city council makeup, the makeup of several boards that are in New Orleans. The diversity is not as diverse as it used to be. The reasoning is because people are not interested. People are not concerned until something happens that makes them concerned. And people are not looking to see what can I do to make a difference. And then when we have programs, when we come together with formed things that we're saying, okay, listen, here's an event for you to come in, get involved, do some things. Well, if it's not my group doing it, or if it's not my people doing it, or if it's not my person doing it, I don't want to get involved in it. So we're only looking at tunnel vision. If we don't have a horse in the race, we're not looking to do it. We have the amount of money within our communities that we can put candidates, Chuck, in every race and win. We can do it, but we don't have unified efforts. We don't.
But now I hear that all the time, but I'm not so sure I agree with that. Like, we don't have unified efforts. I think almost every election for the last 20 years, if we go out and look at the way Black people vote, Black people, in terms of voting, in terms of who they vote for and who they support, are probably more unified than any other group in this country. In fact, in fact, 12% of Black men apparently voted for Donald Trump. And because 12% of Black men voted for Donald Trump, that was like the story of the day. Like, oh my God, what's happening to Black men? And it was just 12. It was 12%. That's how.
It actually was 9.7%, but if you listen to the mainstream media, they add a little bit inflated.
But so that even validates my point further. It's like Black people are so unified in how they vote. 10%, just 10% of Black men, not 10% of Black people collectively. 10% of Black men vote a different way, and it's like, oh my God, what happened? It's crazy. How did
we are unified? We're unified in our efforts to vote for an individual or to get behind one thing. We're not unified at the point where we start planning, organizing, and putting our own individual candidates in races on. And listen, I'm not just talking about political races. I'm talking about boards. I'm talking about corporations that have boards. We don't demand what we bring to the table. We make the difference in races all across this country, but we don't demand. But we don't demand. See, here's what happens. For example, I'll just use races, congressional races, Senate races. We have had capable candidates in statewide races in the state of Louisiana, yet we have never had a statewide elected official. We have had numerous people who are qualified. Now, listen, at the end of the day, I am not looking for Jesus. There are people who, when you have an African-American candidate, for some reason they have to walk on water, part the Red Sea, all of that. Nobody, we're all humans. But we want, when we see an African-American candidate, we expect them to be this, and this. But we don't hold that same accountability to someone who doesn't look like that African-American candidate. Yet we will send money to the candidate over here, but we're not going to invest in this candidate. So I think what I'm saying, Chuck, is that if the community can't get behind this person, then what's going to make some outside person who may be thinking about investing to get behind this person? Why, if your own community won't get behind you, support you emotionally, physically, and financially, then why would I get behind you and support you? When I say unified, I mean unified effort to make change within our own communities. And we can do that by putting candidates in. And see, here's another thing. We can't put candidates in the race today and the race is in October. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The numbers are not going to add up. We're not going to be able, first of all, we're not going to be able to get out that amount of grassroots. We're not going to be able to get out to the people. We're not going to be able to go into the communities in that short of time. But if I give you 2 years and start building your grassroots from 2 years out before the election, you're definitely going to have a chance. You're definitely, listen, Lucy McGrath's son was killed. She started her outreach and grassroots the day after her son was killed. Not for politics, understand. She started for outreach, to make a difference, to make a change in society, in the way they treat young Black men. And she wanted to stand up for her son. She took her platform and she brought it into the community, and she built upon that platform, and she got people to buy into that platform, and eventually she used that same platform to bring her into politics. But it wasn't something she did yesterday. Trayvon Martin's mom, she didn't win the race, but she came very close. Her platform started the day her son died, and she used her voice to elevate. And throughout that time, she was building consensus, building relationships, building her point to where she could then run for public office. It is not, see, you have to do the work. You have to put the work in. And these candidates nowadays are not willing to put the work in. It is not about showing up and doing some cameos and handing out some toys and doing, that is not what it is. But I'm going to tell you something, Chuck, and it's not going to be popular. We've allowed that to be the norm in our communities. That's a good person. He gave us a bike for Christmas. She's a good person. She gave us a turkey for Thanksgiving. They good. They cut our children's hair. That is all we ask for. So when we see people like Steve Scalise and John Kennedy and Clay Higgins saying these things and doing these things, they can do that because they have a consensus build. They have these people uplifting them. And we can't do anything but sit back and look at it because we allowed it. Because we haven't gotten behind anybody to say, listen, we know this guy is dangerous. So we already know this person's got to be gone in the next couple of years because this is the way it's going to happen. We've got to be able to do that.
But it's still like a numbers game. I'm just going to say in Louisiana, I think, Black folk, we represent about 33% of the population, like a third of the population. And so, there's still a significant amount of white folk in the state of Louisiana. And so it's because of that, it might be a while before you see, Black and brown people winning statewide election in this state. And so I don't know how much we could do about that. Right?
Oh, we can do a lot. I'm telling you, look, Chuck, I'm telling you, the numbers have been run. We have the numbers because here's what happens. There's never an election where there's going to be one Black candidate and one white candidate. It's not going to happen. So you generally have 4 to 5 people, 3 to 4 people in a race. Mm-hmm. And because of the jungle primary that we have, everybody's running together. So you have the Republican and the Democrat, mm-hmm. and then you're battling it out at the end. We have an opportunity for this to happen. The numbers, even though we only have this percentage, we have the higher amount of voter turnout when we do have voter turnout in African-American numbers that are higher than our white counterparts in the rural areas. So we have the opportunity to do it. The problem is we don't put the work in to do it. We don't, like right now, for example, we know the election happened for governor, okay? So the minute that happened, Jeff Landry started his campaign to run for governor. Now, there's been no announcement, but we know he's going to run against John Bel Edwards. He started that campaign the same time John Bel was running. So his campaign's already started. He's already been on the stage saying things, doing things to get the hype. He started his campaign because this is the way it works. You don't jump out the year of the election and think somebody's going to get behind you and vote. This is a consensus building, and we can do it.
You think an African American could win, could be governor or win one of the Senate seats?
I think an African American can be lieutenant governor, and I'll explain to you why. My thought process on that is you have to remember, people see the lieutenant governor. This is what they think: lieutenant governor go around and make videos and sell the state's tourism. They don't see the lieutenant governor as being technical at anything. They don't see the lieutenant governor's job as being responsible for budget cuts or rallying things outside of lobbying and gun control. They don't see any of that. They see the state of Louisiana sees, and I know this because there's been polling done on it, where when we ask people what the lieutenant governor does, they say he goes around, tastes food, talks to the community about tourism, and builds our reputation across the world on our food and our music and our culture. That's what they see the lieutenant governor as being. So if this is what the consensus is as lieutenant governor, then I think we start by building on that and getting a candidate that is actually able to go across the lines. And when I say go across the lines, I'm sit there and talk to people and be able to go across lines with not just having a one issue probability. Someone who understands that in the state of Louisiana, people fish and hunt. In the state of Louisiana, it's a Bible Belt. The state of Louisiana, you have to be able, I'm not saying you have to agree. I'm saying you have to have those tough conversations. We have gotten to the point where we either here or there. And I said to somebody recently on a trip to Georgia, when they said, well, you know, it's such a liberal. I said, let me explain something to you about African Americans. I don't know who ever put a label of liberal on African Americans, because we are some of the most conservative people you ever want to meet. Black people have been sculpted, taught, and learned about Jesus. You can't talk about Jesus in the average African American home. Jesus is God. That you can't do it. That is, they live the things we talk about. We got to go to church. We got to do this. They do not believe in abortions. The average African American does not believe in abortions. We believe in saving our money. We don't believe in splurging. We believe grandma had this. We want to keep grandma's house. We know grandma kept her money here. Grandma said, if you don't have the amount of money to go to the store and buy that TV, you wait till you go get it. You don't get it on credit. We came from that. So we are probably one of the most conservative race of people that there is, but we're labeled liberal. We're labeled radical. And so I think in order for us to start changing the way things are done, we have to start changing the perception of who we are. We've allowed these labels. And I say this because I put myself included on it. We've allowed ourselves to be labeled in all different kind of categories, not just political. We've allowed ourselves to be labeled on jail, crime, teen pregnancy, low poverty rates, jobs. We've allowed this to happen. And if you actually look at the real numbers, we're one of the hardest working people in the nation. Now, if you listen to everybody else, they'll say it's, you know, the Mexican community or the Asian community, but it's not. We're some of the hardest working people in America. And contrary to what you see on TV, 53% of white people, 41% of Black people, and 6% other are on welfare. But when you turn the TV on, they're showing you the stereotype. We have more African-American males, and I want to say this because it's very important. In an age group of 18 to 25, 47% of African-American high school graduates are in college, male. But if you watch TV, we in jail or we in the ground. That is the what they put out there. We're either in jail or we're in the ground. No, we're not. 47% of Black male high school graduates are in college or in a trade school. They're not in jail.
Right, but still, I think we got to be careful with that point because, you know, if we do look at prisons and we look at who is incarcerated, you know, I don't care what the population size of Black people is in these various states. The one thing we could be assured of is that the number of Black people who are incarcerated is going to greatly exceed.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We know that we're the ones in jail. What I'm saying is the perception. I'm not saying to change the narrative. We know that we're the ones in jail. There's no doubt about that. No, but I'm saying the perception of a Black male. The reason why I'm saying it is it's key to me because there's a perception of the Black male in America that is totally off cue. That's why I'm talking about those numbers. Because we know that we're in jail. The justice system, what people don't realize is I don't even understand why people are so mad at a system that was never designed for us. It was always designed for us to do the work, labor-wise, that's why we have so many African Americans in prison. That's cheap labor. It's like modern-day slavery. Also, if you look back at the numbers, just like the Innocent Project, Beauregard, Don's, what's happening in the last 10 years? Look how many Black men have been released from prison, served 27, 35, 41 years for crimes they did not commit. What do they get when they get out? An attaboy, tap on the back, maybe a little concession of money, but they've served life sentences. A majority of life, when they get out, they don't recognize the place they're in. There's no jobs for them. There's no training. We have a responsibility to change the narrative of what we're allowing us to be labeled as. That's what I'm talking about. By no means am I trying to discredit the fact that we know that we're the ones in prison. We know that. There's no doubt in that. But what I'm saying is, we know that point, but we've allowed that label to say that this is all we can do as Black men.
There's one thing that that's one of the reasons why I kind of like push back a little earlier when we talked about we're not unified, because there's another thing that I think we have to change. Like when they say, well, this idea about like, well, Black people don't support each other. See, I think we got to stop saying that. And I don't buy that. And like for instance, like there was this thing where people would say, well, the dollar stays in the Black neighborhood, like less than 24 hours. It stays in this community X amount of hours. Well, I wanted to do a little research on that because I didn't question the veracity of that statement. I just wanted to know is, when they drew their conclusions, if they could included like the money from the second economy. You understand what I'm saying? The money that where you ain't got no taxes associated. And while I was just looking for that answer, I realized that the person who said that, who made that statement, he never showed where he got that information from, right? Never. And then this thing about how much money in the Jewish community, I'd read someplace where they said it's highly unlikely that he got that because the federal government they don't
regulate that. They don't regulate.
Well, they don't account for like Judaism as a religion. They don't look at look at it and they might look at it.
They also don't poll Jewish people because Jewish people poll as white. So there's no data on that.
Right. That's why at the bottom line, that's what I find. There was really no data on that. But if that's like BS, but we still always around repeating that, I think in the end it does more harm because, first of all, if you go back, say like 75 years, and you ain't have no Black people who had jobs or as mechanics because or whatever period we coming up from slavery and we don't have these kind of jobs, and then all of a sudden the first Black dude show up at your house and say he's going to fix your refrigerator. I can see how other Black people would be like, really? Are you sure you're going to be able to do this, right? Especially with whatever the thing is, if you've never saw Black people doing that in any capacity, I can see people might act that way. But now it's different. Like for instance, I went to Xavier University. My whole life I sat in classrooms with very capable Black people. And so like for instance, I tore my Achilles tendon. Dr. Chris Marrero, he put my my Achilles back together. I never said, well, I wonder, Chris probably don't know what he's doing. It's like, no, now maybe if you go back to a certain time where, Black people had never seen a Black physician and they had never seen a Black physician who could put an Achilles back together, well, they might have some questions, right? But it's 2020 and we don't have to worry about that anymore because a lot of us have seen, very capable, hardworking Black people who could do anything, right? But nevertheless, many of us are still repeating that same stuff. And I think when we just keep, and Well, I don't repeat that, but we hear people who always constantly
And that's
repeating
why I
it,
don't
and
say
I think it does more harm.
it does. That's why I don't say support, because I know there's a lot of Black people that support. My issue is when I say unification, I mean we have to be unified on what we allow to be done and said in our communities, and we are not unified on that. We allow, and I'm not going to keep going to politics because it's not just politics, it's in everything that we do. We have people who stand strong. For example, I'll go to Take Them Down Nola, okay? That was a unified effort. That was work. Like it wasn't just like we gonna just like here's what the narrative was. Oh, they just making noise. They just doing this. This was a unified effort. These people met. They worked. They collaborated. They organized. They put it together. They went out there. They did what they had to do, and they got results. You know why? Because they had a unified message. They had a unified effort. They had unified organization, and they built on their message and on what they needed to do in delivering it. They had demands and they didn't back down. It was a unified front across the board. When I say unified, that's what I'm talking about. And it was unapologetically. In other words, they didn't really care if everybody came on. But that unified front, once it was formed, you wasn't breaking it. You see what I'm saying? You couldn't come in, infiltrate. You couldn't come in and say, let me send somebody over there to see what they're doing and get this and bring that information. And so that's the unified that I'm speaking of. And I don't want to make them and put the poster. I'm just saying that I saw that work. I saw those people unified. And when I say unified, that effort took a consensus. And they didn't just do it overnight. This is a building process. And they did the education. They did the research. They knew what they were doing, when they were doing it, how they were doing it. And they informed the masses. Like they didn't just go out and say, okay, we're going to meet at 3:00. Everybody do this. They had a network. They told people what they were doing, why they were doing it, how they were doing it, what they were going to do with it, and what the purpose was and the meaning and how they hope to carry it out. When I'm saying unified, that's what I'm talking about.
I got you. Hey, Lex. I would be remiss if I. First of all, thank you very much for that clarity. I really do appreciate it. And I've, it looked like, time moves so fast. Look like we got about 5 more minutes left, and I've really enjoyed the conversation with you. But I would be remiss if I didn't make a certain point today. We started off talking about voting. And I just, since our time is winding down, I wanted to end on one point, because I guess Sunday was, yesterday was Easter Sunday, right? And so there was a very, awful thing that happened in this state on Easter Sunday in 1873, right? And it happened in Colfax, Louisiana. It happened in Colfax, Louisiana. It was a massacre in Colfax, Louisiana. And so I guess that's 138 years ago yesterday in Colfax, Louisiana. There were 150 African-American men and women massacred there because the men were trying to vote. And one of the things that happened is, prior to, the 15th Amendment had only been ratified in 1870. And then in 1871 and 1872, they had some enforcement acts. One of them, they call it the Ku Klux Klan Enforcement Act, because they wanted to give the authorities a little more firepower to fight against the white supremacist groups. So you got a new amendment to the Constitution, and you got these 2 enforcement acts that were passed. And unfortunately, there wasn't one person who spent a day in jail for it. 0. And in fact, I read the book called The Colfax Massacre. That's why I know a little bit about what happened there. And man, I was so appalled, Lex, is that right now in Colfax, Louisiana, and there's a cemetery, and this cemetery is across the street from a church. And inside that cemetery, there's a monument that basically says that this monument was erected for the 3 brave white men, and it listed their names, who died fighting for white supremacy.
That's correct. That's correct. And one of those names, even though they're in Colfax, Louisiana, originated from Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana, and he was a descendant of Leander Perez. And if you've heard anything about Plaquemines Parish and Perez, that is what they did there. And those same Jan Brennan, who was a part of the Colfax, also took that and brought it into Opelousas. And later on, they had the Opelousas Massacre. Same thing.
Yeah, the Opelousas Massacre, the Thibodeau Massacre, the Mechanic Institute, the Battle of Liberty Place, like all of that stuff.
We've been fighting for a long time, dying for a long time.
And it goes back to almost to how we started this. You know, if voting doesn't, if it doesn't mean anything, then why have people been trying to take it away from you from the very beginning? At first, they wouldn't let you vote at all. Then they let you vote, and then once we were allowed to vote, they figured out ways to not let us vote. And if we're not careful, again, as I said earlier, we're starting to see this voter suppression, raise its ugly head again. I guess just recently.
6 states, Chuck. Everybody keeps talking about Georgia, and so I've been telling people, take your eyes off Georgia right now, because Georgia is already done. It's been voted and passed. We have Texas, we have Alabama, we have Mississippi, we have Tennessee, and we have Arkansas that's coming to the table with the same kind of bills. Same kind of bills. And we're not paying attention, because there's all kind of other things that are taken away from us understanding exactly what's going on. And there's nobody that's really speaking on it and talking about it. And today, the actual author of the Texas bill spoke on his reasoning, and he was all over the place, and none of what he was saying made any sense. He kept talking about the same talking points. They say voter fraud, this and that. So there in Texas, that bill is going to lessen voting hours. It's going to take all of the mail-in boxes out. You won't be able to drop off anything. It's going to take out drive-through voting. It's going to shorten mail-in voting dates, and it's going to shorten election hours. Now, all of that is beneficial in minority communities. So we're not saying anything. We're not doing anything. Nobody's talking about it. And they're slowly bringing these bills in. While we're over here watching the chickens roost, they're over here laying the eggs, and we're not paying attention to it. And so, again, when you and I talked about accountability and why people have apathy, who are the ones that are supposed to be watching the gate? The people we send to represent us. So if our legislators, if our city council members, if our people that are in position that we've put them in are not paying attention to this legislation that these people are putting forth, then we're not going to know about it. The average citizen is not going to know about what's going on. And that's not the average citizen's job. It's the job of the people that we sent to be able to represent us, to come back and say, listen, this is what we have. This is the uphill battle we're about to do. And we're going to need this, and I'm going to need to inform you. We don't have town halls. We don't have informative sessions, none of that. So what I'm concerned about, Chuck, is exactly what you're saying. This is going to be just a small thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And before you know it, we're going to need an ID. We're going to need affidavit. We're going to need all of this to go vote. We might even start having to have a test again, because we've let things get so out of control. And the people who are attending the House have had free-for-all for so long without accountability and without anybody paying attention. To now they're just putting things together to make sure, and they're not even apologizing. They're not afraid to say, I'm doing this.
But Lex, so it's like 8:02. So I'll give you my final word, and then I'll let you close us out. I'll tell you the good news is, when we look at the forces who are interested in things like voter suppression and whatnot, me personally, it's a sinking ship. It's a sinking ship. So we're probably going to see a lot more of this right now, because remember what I said about when Ronald Reagan, 83% of the voters were white. Then it came down to 67 with Obama, and now it's steadily going down. Well, they know though it's a numbers game. In the end, in the long run, they lose. But I think right now, for the immediate future, we're going to have some growing pains. And so we're going to have to deal, with some of the ugliness that's surfacing, while they're making this last gasp to hang on to power. Now, we do have to be careful that they won't just, figure out ways to change the laws, and you know what I'm saying, so that they can hang on to that power a little longer. But in my estimation, it's a sinking ship, and they know it, and that's why we're seeing this kind of stuff. But I'll give you the last word, Lex, before we close out.
Well, all I want to say is I think that one of the things that we agree on, and I think it's good that we have two different perspectives, but the same goal, is because something we talked about earlier. None of us think the same. None of us act the same. None of us operate the same. And so as long as our mission remains the same, we can agree to disagree. We can have different objectives on how we do things. We can have different approaches. But if our
Amen,
ultimate
my
goal is
sister.
the same,
Amen.
then we good. We good. We good. Well, it's another good show, Chuck. I enjoyed it. We're going to do some
I
more
enjoyed it as well, Lex.
building. And we hope to build and as Wayne would say, lay a few more breadcrumbs down so we can continue to follow and make some difference. I appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate you too, Lex. Thank you. I look
You
forward to
have a
seeing
good night.
everybody next month.
Good night. See you next month, guys. Thank you.